Justine Waters answered her phone when it rang. It was a message from her husband Tom, who had been away on a business trip. The message said his work was done, and he was on his way back for their anniversary dinner at Mario's at 7 o'clock. Surprisingly, there were no romantic emojis or sweet words. Justine replied with a simple happy anniversary, love you, but received no response. Realizing she had time before meeting Tom, Justine went to shower. Later, when talking to Jake, her secret lover, she explained that Tom had finished work early and was on his way back. Jake suggested a playful surprise for Tom, but Justine declined, citing the need to clean up quickly. She reassured Jake that Tom likely didn't know about their affair, as he had been distant lately. After their conversation, Justine picked out a clean dress, showered, and got ready. Jake hinted at being available if she needed anything, and Justine left for her meeting with Tom. Meanwhile, Tom, smoking in his car near Mario's, received a message from a private investigator revealing Justine's departure from Jake's place. He saw a picture of her in the blue dress sent by the investigator. She visited Carter's apartment, and Tom hadn't seen the dress before. Justine was correct about one thing. Tom had returned a day early from his business trip out east due to a serious security breach. A mysterious figure known as Alpha One, whose real name Tom didn't know, informed him of the problem and demanded a discreet resolution. In Alpha One's office, Tom felt the gravity of the situation. Alpha One, with a head movement reminiscent of an actor who once played Moses, emphasized the urgency of solving the problem quietly. Tom, understanding the stakes, responded with a respectful, "Yes, sir." He knew Alpha One had the power to make people disappear. Contrary to Justine's perception, Tom was more than a traveling salesman specializing in security equipment. The devices he sold and installed had special circuits that provided Alpha One with extensive insights into client activities. The problem at hand, unbeknownst to Tom until recently, involved his wife of 5 years, Justine. For the past year and a half, Justine had been involved in a torrid affair with Jake Carter, a senior partner at the law firm where she worked. Tom had sensed something was amiss in their relationship, but it became clear when he discovered the details of the affair. Adding to the complexity, Justine had announced her pregnancy. However, a lawyer Tom consulted revealed that obtaining a divorce would be challenging in this state. While Justine was pregnant, Tom faced the possibility of being responsible for child support if the baby turned out to be his, despite the prenuptial agreement they had both signed. The house he owned before the marriage might be the only thing he wouldn't have to worry about. Throughout the pregnancy, Tom endured in silence and managed to control his temper. However, when Justine named the baby Jacob immediately after birth, Tom's suspicions grew. After a DNA test, he confirmed that the boy wasn't his. As he waited at Mario's, Tom spotted Justine arriving with a man in a khaki jacket and a woman carrying a briefcase. Confirming that they were there for him, Tom approached and exchanged quiet words with the woman. Seated in a corner booth, he noticed a khaki-clad man and woman nearby. After ordering, Tom acknowledged Justine's presence and stood up to greet her. Despite a neutral tone, he complimented her on a dress he claimed not to have seen before. As they danced, Justine sensed Tom maintaining a distance, and upon returning to their booth, she questioned his reserved demeanor. During dinner, Tom hinted at the lingering scent of Jake Carter on Justine's dress, suggesting she couldn't fully rid herself of his influence. Offended, Justine denied any connection beyond professional knowledge of Jake. So, Tom said, "Considering the time you've spent in his bed and the fact that he's little Jacob's sperm donor, this is all quite clear." "What are you saying? This is outrageous. I won't sit here and listen to you talk to me like that," she said indignantly. "Actually, sit," Tom said, opening his briefcase. "You're going to sit there and absorb whatever information I decide to give you, especially after what you've been doing for the last 16 months. I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. Let's start with this," he added, dropping a piece of paper in front of her. "It's the result of your baby's DNA test. According to this, Jacob is not my son. The next sheet is another DNA test that proves the sperm donor is none other than your lover, Jake Carter, the man you named Jacob after. How could you have gotten Jake's DNA? She asked in confusion. It was easy. You brought it home with you at least 3 nights a week. But that wasn't all, he said, pulling out a thick folder and tossing it on the table. It's a copy of every email, text message, and email between you and Jake for the last 16 months. I hate to break it to you, but there's really no such thing as internet privacy. Okay, I admit it, she said. Jake and I fooled around once, but that was it. And it was just sex. It didn't mean anything. Not at all, really. Please turn to page 75 and go about halfway down the page until you find the passage I've highlighted. Tell me what you see. She flipped through the pages until she got to the one Tom was referring to. Her face paled as she read her own words to Jake. I'm waiting. I'm reading it, she said quietly out loud. I want to hear you say the words you wrote to him, he demanded. She swallowed and looked at the page again. Please, she begged. Don't make me do this. Either you do it, or I will. And if I do it, I don't care who hears it, he said. Tears streaming down her face, Justine looked at the paper again and began to read the words Tom had highlighted. I love what you're doing to me, Jake. I have never felt as wonderfully fulfilled as I have in the last 16 months. I can't wait for you to knock me up with another baby. In all the time we've been married, I don't remember you ever talking to me like that, Tom said. Is that all you have? She asked nervously. No, I have pictures, audio, and video. Hours upon hours of video. You must really hate me, Justine said quietly. Yes, of course, I do, he replied. She looked up, shocked by what he had just said. It was like a slap in the face. There was a time when I would have taken a bullet for you. How long have you known? I had my suspicions even before you told me you were pregnant. I did some digging and got some evidence, enough to satisfy the prenup. However, by the time I spoke to a lawyer, you had informed me that you were pregnant. The lawyer explicitly told me that no judge would even consider divorce until after you had given birth, child support, and all that. But now that Jacob was born, I had more than enough evidence to do my job. So I filed for divorce on grounds of adultery, Tom explained. He pointed to 2 people at a neighboring table who stood up and walked over to their table. This nice man has something for you, Miss Justine Waters, the man asked. Yes, Justine said quietly. The man placed a heavy paper envelope in front of her. You have been served, he informed her. Served? Justine asked, tears rolling down her face. Yes, Tom said, handing her a pen. Divorce papers. Look at them. They're exactly as we agreed in the prenup. Sign them now, and I'm ready to give you a bank check for $2,145.63, the exact amount you had when we got married. Don't ask for anything else. I already know about your secret little slush fund. You can keep it all. Your things were delivered to your mother's house. Yes, she knows, and she's very disappointed in you. But she's agreed to let you stay with her until you find a place of your own. For the boy, not for you. But I don't want a divorce, Tom. I love you, please, Justine pleaded. Don't insult my intelligence. Listen to this, he said, pulling out his phone and replaying her conversation with Jake from earlier that day. Her eyes widened as she heard her own voice coming from Tom's phone. How did you get that? She asked. Well, I'd tell you, but then I'd really have to shoot you on sight. As much as I hate you right now, I really don't think it was right to deprive little Jacob of his mother, Tom said with a smile that lacked warmth. I was nothing more than food stamps and a guardian to you while your baby daddy got all the benefits. Just so you know, your ticket is punched. No more free lunches for you, at least not for me. What about Jake? She asked, worried. Ah, worried about daddy, huh? Luckily, we live in a state that allows lawsuits for alienation of affection. He's being served right now. It may or may not lead to something, but it's the principle that matters, isn't it? Either way, his problems are just beginning. Today, I spoke to Hamilton Parker, your managing partner, showed him my evidence, and expressed my displeasure. Knowing that one of his senior partners was involved with a subordinate, specifically a subordinate who is my wife, at least for the time being, Mr. Parker was quite upset. He agreed that it would be best if Mr. Carter was no longer associated with the firm and assured me that he would discuss this with his board of directors this evening. He also agreed that it would be wrong to penalize you, especially since you are a mother with a newborn baby. After all, Mr. Carter was your boss, if I may say so, and he didn't want to expose the firm to a potential sexual harassment suit, given your work history there. He agreed it would be best to keep you on board, at least for a while. But I assure you, Mr. Carter's problems are just beginning, Tom explained. How much do you know about your lover? I mean, really know, he continued. What do you know about his clients, the people he does business with, who he really represents, and what he does when he's not stuffing you into his mattress? I don't know. He doesn't talk to me about any of that stuff. That's probably a good thing. Let's just say your Jake Carter has a very interesting clientele, the kind that attracts the attention of certain federal agencies that can make a man disappear without a trace. You know what I'm talking about. You scare me, Tom, and you should be scared, he told her. Are you scared enough to stay away from Jake Carter? Because he's going down, and if you're anywhere near him when it happens, you're going down too. Who are you, Tom? She asked. Really? He smiled, nodding his head at the papers in front of her. Sign the papers, Justine, and stop this farce now. I probably told you too much already. And by the way, your credit card has been canceled, and your house key doesn't work anymore. I changed the locks today while you were with Jake. I also took care of the bank account, so you no longer have access to it. Considering you save half your earnings into your own secret account, that shouldn't be a problem for you anyway. You knew everything, didn't you? She asked. Tom shrugged his shoulders, defeated. Justine looked over the divorce papers and saw that they were exactly as Tom had said. She signed the papers and handed the pen back to Tom. He smiled, took the pen, and looked over the papers. The process server witnessed the signatures, and the woman accompanying him notarized the signed documents. Tom handed the papers back to the man. I'll make sure this gets to your lawyer, Mr. Waters, the man said. Thank you, Tom said. After they left, Tom turned to Justine again. I think you should give your rings back, he told her. Do I have to do that? I love those rings, she exclaimed. Apparently not enough to stay out of Jake Carter's bed. Tearfully, she removed the rings and placed them on the table. He put them in his pocket before turning to her. I believe our business here is concluded. Is that your conclusion? Is that all you have to say? What more needs to be said? Tom asked. Why did you do this on our anniversary? She asked, tears streaming down her face. Do you know how humiliating that was for me? Do you know how humiliating it was for me to find out that you've been fooling around with me all this time, and how humiliating it was to find out that Jacob wasn't my son, and how humiliating it was for me to find out you, __, Carter, on our anniversary? Don't give me that, Tom said. We're done. Goodbye, Justine. I never want to see your face again. With these words, he went back to his food without looking at Justine, who was wiping her face. The waitress came over and asked if everything was okay. Yes, the food is excellent, as always, Tom said nonchalantly. I'll take care of the payment, and I suppose the lady will take her food with her. Please, yes, sir, the waitress said as she left to get Justine's food box. She returned a few minutes later and put Justine's leftover food in a styrofoam container. Tom handed the waitress his credit card and paid for the food, while Justine gathered her things. When the waitress was done, Justine looked at Tom. That's it? Tom said, waving his hand. She couldn't believe he had just brushed her off. I'm sorry, Tom, she uttered. He tore his gaze away from his food before he spoke. Well, we can both agree on that, he said. Now, have a good day. Say hi to your mom for me. Oh, and happy anniversary, he added with a slight smile. Justine, Not believing the calm manner in which her husband had basically just tossed her out like trash, ran out from the table sobbing. Tom smiled and went back to eating. He noticed several diners looking at him with disdain but only smiled back, shrugging his shoulders. Outwardly, he may have been calm and collected, but inside he was emotionally shattered. 5 years down the drain. At least now, the worst was over. Epilogue. Tom managed to get through the next few days without incident. It hadn't been easy. He had once really loved Justine, and it hurt him that he had to treat her like that. But he decided it was better to do that than to pounce on her the way he wanted to. Then the day came when he heard a knock on his front door. He was in his master bedroom upstairs and looked out the window to see Carter's sports car in the driveway. He had a hunch that something like this was going to happen, so he made some additions to his home security system at Alpha One's urging. He went downstairs and opened the door. It was Jake Carter, of course, and he was angry. Tom backed up as Carter squeezed his way in. "You son of a __. You cost me my job, and Justine won't even talk to me. I'll kill you, you __. Piece of __. Jake shouted, blushing. He loomed over Tom until he saw 15 tiny red dots suddenly appear on his shirt. Emergency storm. An electronic voice shouted from speakers built into the walls. "Don't move." "What the hell is this?" shouted the uninvited guest. He raised his hands as if swiping the dots. Suddenly, there was the jerky sound of a gunshot, like the blast from an air rifle. When Jake looked down, he saw 15 darts sticking out of his body. He reached up, but he never did. His eyes rolled up, and his body collapsed to the floor. "I don't think you're going to be able to kill anyone today, Carter," Tom said calmly, grabbing his phone. He pressed an icon on the phone and heard a man's voice. "Operator 715, 463. Clean up aisle 15, Tom said. "Copy that," the man said. Tom pressed another icon, and the systems that had just fired a charge of tranquilizer darts at Jake turned and retracted back into the ceiling. When the doors of the systems closed, no one could tell there was anything there. Tom smiled, satisfied that the new security system had worked as announced. A few minutes later, an unmarked white van pulled into the driveway. Several men in tie-C suits entered the house and dragged Jake's gutless body out. One of them grabbed Jake's keys and got into the sports car. A couple of minutes later, the van and Jake's sports car were gone. Tom closed the door and went about his business. A few days later, after Tom had bought a caramel mocha at a local coffee shop, he was stopped on the street by a large man in a dark suit and sunglasses. "Alpha One wants to talk to you, Mr. Waters," the man growled. "Now," Tom said, a little discouraged by the man's behavior. He followed the man to a long black limousine parked on the side of the street and got in after the man opened the back door. "Waters, good to see you're out," Alpha One said after the door closed. Yes, sir. I have a lot to do," Tom said. Alpha One smiled and put his hand on Tom's shoulder in a friendly manner. "You're welcome, Tom. When it's just the two of us, you can call me Regis," said the one-eyed man. "I wanted to give you an update on Mr. Carter. He sings like a canary." "Thank you, Alpha, Regis. So he says all the right things then?" Tom asked. "Oh yes, he does. Right off the bat," said Regis. "But now he's literally singing like a canary. Seems the combination of those tranquilizer darts in the new security system and the serum we use to extract the information we need has turned his brain into applesauce. Right now, he's swinging on a swing in a metal cage and chirping like a bird." "Oh," Tom said. Regis pulled an envelope out of his jacket pocket and held it out to Tom. "We got him to settle out of court with you before he got too incompetent to sign his name," Regis said. "He was so grateful to be alive that he agreed to a lot more than you wanted." "Well, that's good to hear," said Tom. "By the way, I want you to know that I'm really impressed with your new system, Regis. Now that we got what we need from Carter, I'm glad you didn't use the 5-caliber chain guns I suggested." Regis grinned at that. "Have you heard anything about Justine?" Tom asked. Yes, she's back to work, although Mr. Parker keeps her on a very short leash. Did you ever mention to her who you really work for? Regis asked. No, Regis, I never did, said Tom. Regis nodded his head. He already knew that from his monitoring devices, but he wanted to hear it from Tom in person. Okay, Regis said. Well, when your divorce is finalized, I'd like you to come to headquarters. I'd like to introduce you to your new partner. Partner? Tom asked. I've never needed a partner before. Well, there's a first time for everything, isn't there, Tom? Ah, yes, sir. I suppose so, said Tom. Good, said Regis. Then I look forward to meeting you. Me too, Regis said. Tom stepped out of the limousine, and he watched as the large man squeezed into the driver's seat. As the long car merged into the traffic, Tom wondered what Regis had in store for him.